You were supposed to help me, not yourself." My sister Bethany's voice rang across the Thanksgiving table. Her face flushed red with anger. Every pair of eyes at the dinner turned toward me, forks frozen mid-air, the scent of roasted turkey suddenly heavy in the stunned silence. I sat there, my stomach knotting, trying to process what had just happened. All I had done was mention, in what I thought was casual conversation, that I had recently purchased a condo in Miami. A beautiful place overlooking the water, something I had worked toward for years. But judging by the horrified expressions around the table, you would have thought I had announced I was joining a cult. My name is Diana. I am 32 years old, and I have spent the last decade building a career in commercial real estate development. I work for Brightvale Mining, a company that specializes in securing land deals and developing properties across the southeastern United States. My job is demanding, requiring long hours, constant travel, and an ability to negotiate deals that can make or break a project. I have clawed my way up from an entry-level position to a senior acquisitions manager, and every promotion I have earned came with sacrifices, late nights, missed holidays, relationships that fizzled because I was always on a plane to some new city. I gave up a lot to get where I am today, and I did it without asking anyone for help. Bethany, on the other hand, is 29 years old and has never held a job for more than 18 months. She has worked in marketing, public relations, event planning, and a dozen other fields, each time convinced that this was finally the career that would stick. Each time, something went wrong. A boss who did not appreciate her vision, co-workers who were jealous of her ideas, companies that were too rigid to let her creativity flourish. Our parents always believed her, always cushioned her fall with reassurances that she was simply too talented for those environments, that she was going through a phase, that the right opportunity had not yet presented itself. I used to feel sympathy for her. I used to think maybe she really was struggling to find her place in the world. But over the years, I started to see a pattern. Bethany did not struggle because the world was unfair to her. She struggled because she expected everything to be handed to her without effort. She wanted the corner office without working the entry-level job. She wanted the six-figure salary without developing the skills. And our parents enabled her every step of the way. Sitting at that Thanksgiving table, with Bethany glaring at me and my parents looking disappointed, I realized something I had been trying to ignore for years. They did not see my success as something I had earned. They saw it as something that should have been shared with Bethany. They truly believed that because I had done well, I owed her a piece of it. The condo in Miami was not a symbol of my hard work. It was proof that I had been selfish. My mother set down her glass of wine, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Diana, you know your sister has been going through a difficult time. Was this really the best moment to bring up such an extravagant purchase?" I stared at her, trying to find the words. Extravagant? I had saved for years. I had worked 80-hour weeks. I had missed birthdays and weddings and family gatherings because I was building something for myself. And now, because I had finally bought a home I could be proud of, I was being made to feel guilty. I did not think mentioning it would be a problem, I said quietly. I was just sharing some good news. Bethany let out a bitter laugh. Good news? Diana, do you have any idea how tone-deaf that sounds? I have been barely scraping by, and you are over here buying a multi-million-dollar condo like it is nothing. Barely scraping by? I repeated, my voice sharper than I intended. You have been living rent-free in Mom and Dad's house for the past year. They pay for your car insurance. They cover your phone bill. You are not scraping by. You are being supported. My father cleared his throat, his expression stern. That is enough, Diana. Your sister is going through a rough patch, and the last thing she needs is to be reminded of how much more successful you are. I felt my chest tighten. How much more successful I was, as if my career had been handed to me on a silver platter. as if I had not worked myself to exhaustion to get here. I wanted to scream at them, to make them understand that I had earned every single thing I had. But I could see it in their faces. They did not want to understand. They wanted me to apologize for not making Bethany's life easier. "I am not trying to make her feel bad," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I just wanted to share something I was proud of." "Well, maybe you should have thought about how it would make her feel," my mother said, her tone dripping with disappointment. Bethany crossed her arms, her eyes glistening with tears. "You have always been like this, Diana. Always putting yourself first. Always acting like you are better than everyone else." I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. I felt trapped, suffocated by the weight of their expectations. I had spent my entire adult life trying to prove myself, trying to show them that I was capable and strong. And now, in this moment, I realized that none of it mattered. They did not see me as successful. They saw me as selfish. The rest of the dinner passed in uncomfortable silence. I picked at my food, barely tasting anything. Bethany sat across from me, her expression a mixture of anger and self-pity. My parents exchanged glances, their disappointment palpable. When the meal finally ended, I helped clear the table, desperate for an excuse to leave the room. As I stood at the sink, rinsing plates, my mother approached me. "Diana, I think you owe your sister an apology." I turned to look at her, disbelief washing over me. "An apology? For what?" "For making her feel small," she said simply. "You know how sensitive she is." I wanted to argue, to tell her that Bethany's feelings were not my responsibility. But I could see it in her eyes. She was not going to budge. In her mind, I was the one in the wrong. I was the one who needed to make things right. I dried my hands on a towel, my jaw clenched. I am not going to apologize for working hard and achieving something. My mother sighed, shaking her head. "This is exactly what I am talking about, Diana. You are so focused on yourself that you cannot see how your actions affect others." I left the kitchen without another word, grabbing my coat and heading for the door. As I walked to my car, I could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on me. I sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, staring at the steering wheel, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside me. I had always known that my family did not fully understand my career, but I had never realized just how little they valued it. To them, my success was not something to be celebrated. It was something to be redistributed. I drove home that night with a heavy heart, replaying the conversation over and over in my mind. I thought about all the times I had supported Bethany, all the times I had offered her advice, connections, even money when she needed it. And yet, it was never enough. She always wanted more, and our parents always expected me to give it. As I pulled into the parking garage of my apartment building in Atlanta, I made a decision. I was done letting them make me feel guilty for my success. I was done apologizing for working hard. If they wanted to see me as selfish, then so be it. I had spent too many years trying to earn their approval, and it was time to stop. But even as I made that vow to myself, a small part of me wondered if things would ever truly change. Would Bethany ever take responsibility for her own life? Would my parents ever see me as more than a resource to be tapped whenever Bethany needed help? I did not have the answers. But I knew one thing for certain. I was not going to sacrifice my own happiness to make them comfortable anymore. I had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to let them take that away from me. I thought about every year I scraped my way up in my career while my sister hopped from job to job, always cushioned by our parents' belief that she was just going through a phase. I remembered the early days, fresh out of college, when I took an unpaid internship at a small real estate firm in Birmingham, Alabama. I lived in a cramped studio apartment with 2 roommates, surviving on ramen noodles and black coffee. I worked 12-hour days, filing paperwork, making cold calls, doing whatever menial tasks my supervisors needed. I was determined to prove myself, to show that I was serious about building a career. Bethany, meanwhile, had graduated a year after me with a degree in communications. She landed a job at a boutique marketing agency in Atlanta, a position our parents had helped her secure through a family friend. She talked endlessly about how excited she was, how this was going to be the start of something amazing. 6 months later, she quit. The work was too demanding, she said. Her boss did not appreciate her creativity. She felt stifled. Our parents consoled her, told her it was okay, that she would find something better. They offered to let her move back home while she figured things out. I was still living in my cramped apartment, still working long hours for little pay, but no one seemed to notice. No one asked how I was doing or if I needed help. My struggles were invisible because I did not complain about them. I just kept pushing forward. Over the next few years, I climbed the ladder slowly and painfully. I earned my real estate license. I started working on small residential deals, then commercial properties. I networked relentlessly, attending industry events even when I was exhausted, building relationships that would eventually lead to bigger opportunities. By the time I was 26, I had landed a job at Brightvale Mining, a well-established company with a reputation for excellence. It was not an easy transition. The competition was fierce, and I had to prove myself all over again. But I did it. I worked harder than anyone else in my department, and slowly I started to earn the respect of my colleagues. Bethany, on the other hand, continued to drift. She worked in public relations for a nonprofit, then left after a year because she felt underappreciated. She tried event planning, convinced it would be a perfect fit for her outgoing personality, but quit after a few months because the hours were too unpredictable. She dabbled in social media management, freelance writing, and even briefly considered going back to school for a graduate degree she never pursued. Each time she left a job, our parents reassured her that she was simply too talented for those environments, that she deserved something better. They never questioned whether she was putting in the effort, never suggested that maybe she needed to stick with something long enough to actually build a skill set. They just kept telling her that the right opportunity was out there, waiting for her. And I kept working. I kept sacrificing. I kept building a life for myself that was entirely my own. By the time I turned 30, I had been promoted to Senior Acquisitions Manager at Brightvale Mining. I was overseeing major land deals, negotiating contracts worth millions of dollars, traveling constantly to meet with investors and developers. My salary had grown substantially, and for the first time in my life, I felt financially secure. I started saving aggressively, setting aside money for the future I wanted to build. I dreamed of owning property, of having a home that was truly mine, not just a rental apartment I could be kicked out of at any moment. The condo in Miami had been a goal for years. I had researched the market, visited dozens of properties, worked with a real estate agent who understood exactly what I was looking for. When I finally found the perfect place, a spacious unit with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean, I knew it was worth every penny. The purchase was a milestone, a tangible representation of everything I had worked for. I was proud of it. I wanted to share that pride with my family. But instead of celebrating with me, they made me feel like I had done something wrong. When my parents ordered me to apologize for making Bethany feel small, I realized they truly expected my success to belong to her. It was not just about the condo. It was about everything. The promotions I had earned, the salary I had worked for, the connections I had built over years of networking and effort. In their minds, all of it should have been shared with Bethany. Because she was struggling, because she had not found her path yet, because she was family. But I had never asked them to share their resources with me. I had never expected them to bail me out when things got hard. I had made my own way, and I had done it without leaning on anyone. Why was I expected to give Bethany what she had not earned? I spent the days after Thanksgiving replaying the conversation in my mind, trying to make sense of their reaction. I thought about calling my mother, trying to explain my perspective, but I knew it would not make a difference. She had already made up her mind. I was the selfish one. I was the one who needed to make amends. Instead, I threw myself into work. I had a major deal closing in early December, and I focused all my energy on making sure it went smoothly. I reviewed contracts, coordinated with legal teams, met with investors. It was easier to bury myself in work than to dwell on the disappointment I felt. But even as I tried to move on, I could not shake the feeling that something had fundamentally shifted in my relationship with my family. I had always known that Bethany was the favorite, that she received more attention and support. But I had convinced myself that it did not matter, that I did not need their approval to be happy. Now, though, I realized just how deep the disparity ran. They did not just favor Bethany, they resented me for succeeding without their help. And the worst part was, I knew this was not the end of it. Bethany was not going to suddenly become self-sufficient. She was going to continue struggling, continue expecting handouts, and our parents were going to continue enabling her. And eventually, they would come back to me, asking for more. Not as a request, but as an expectation. Because in their eyes, my success was not mine to keep. It was a family resource, and Bethany had just as much right to it as I did. I did not know what would happen next, but I knew one thing for certain. I was not going to let them guilt me into sacrificing what I had worked so hard to build. If they wanted to see me as selfish, then I would own it. Because the alternative was giving up everything I had fought for, and I was not willing to do that. Not for them. Not for anyone. I tried to calmly defend myself, but they insisted I owed her opportunities, money, and now even my hard-earned connections. The days after Thanksgiving blurred together in a haze of work and frustration. I kept my phone on silent most of the time, unable to deal with the barrage of messages from my mother. They were always the same. Your sister is hurt. You need to think about how your actions affect her. Family comes first, Diana. I wanted to scream at her that I had been thinking about Bethany for years. I had offered her advice when she was job hunting. I had introduced her to people in my network who might be able to help her. I had even loaned her money once, money that I never saw again. But none of that mattered now. All that mattered was that I had bought a condo and had not consulted them first, as if my financial decisions were somehow subject to a family vote. One evening, about a week after Thanksgiving, my father called. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Maybe I thought he would be more reasonable than my mother. Maybe I hoped he would finally see my side of things. Diana, we need to talk, he said, his voice heavy with disappointment. I sighed, leaning back against the couch in my apartment. Dad, I really do not have the energy for this right now. You do not have the energy? He repeated, his tone incredulous. Your sister is in tears every day because of you, and you do not have the energy? I closed my eyes, trying to keep my voice steady. I did not do anything to her, Dad. I bought a home. That is all. You flaunted it in front of her, he said sharply. You know she is struggling, and you rubbed your success in her face. I did not flaunt anything, I shot back, my patience wearing thin. I mentioned it once, in passing. I did not realize I needed your permission to talk about my own life. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When my father spoke again, his voice was colder. You have always been like this, Diana. Always so focused on yourself. Your mother and I raised you better than that. I felt a lump forming in my throat, but I refused to let him hear me cry. I have worked for everything I have. I have never asked you for anything, and now you are upset with me because I am doing well? That does not make any sense. It makes perfect sense, he said. You are family. You are supposed to help each other. Bethany needs you, and instead of stepping up, you are buying luxury condos and acting like she does not exist. I am not acting like she does not exist, I said, my voice rising. I have helped her before. I have given her advice, connections, money, but she never does anything with it. She just moves on to the next thing and expects someone else to fix her problems. That is not fair, my father said, his tone sharp. She is trying her best. Is she? I asked, the words coming out harsher than I intended. Because from where I am standing, it looks like she is coasting through life, expecting everyone else to carry her. The line went quiet again. I could hear my father breathing on the other end, and I knew I had crossed a line, but I did not care anymore. I was tired of being the villain in their story. You owe her an apology, my father said finally, and you owe her more than that. You have connections, Diana. You could help her get a real job, a good job, but instead, you are hoarding everything for yourself. I felt my stomach drop. There it was, the real reason they were so upset. They did not just want me to apologize. They wanted me to hand Bethany a career on a silver platter. Dad, I cannot just give her a job, I said, my voice shaking. That is not how it works. You could if you wanted to, he insisted. You have the power to make that happen. But you are too selfish to do it. I hung up before he could say anything else. My hands were trembling, and I felt sick to my stomach. They truly believed that my success belonged to them, that I had some obligation to share everything I had earned with Bethany. And no matter what I said, they were not going to change their minds. I spent the next few days in a fog, going through the motions at work but unable to focus. I kept replaying the conversation with my father, the way he had called me selfish, the way he had demanded that I use my connections to help Bethany. It was not a request. It was an expectation. And I knew that if I did not comply, they would never forgive me. But I also knew that giving Bethany a job she had not earned would be a disaster. She did not have the skills, the experience, or the work ethic to succeed in my industry. And if I pulled strings to get her hired, I would be putting my own reputation on the line. My colleagues respected me because I had proven myself. If I started recommending unqualified candidates just because they were family, that respect would disappear. I was trapped. If I helped Bethany, I risked damaging my career. If I did not help her, my family would never forgive me. Then I overheard my sister telling a friend she would finally get a real job because she assumed I would place her in a high-paying role at my company. It happened during a brief visit to my parents' house in Atlanta. I had gone over to pick up some documents my mother had insisted I needed, and I had planned to stay for only a few minutes. But as I walked through the front door, I heard Bethany's voice coming from the living room. She was on the phone, her tone bright and excited. "Yeah, I know," she was saying. "It has been such a rough year, but things are finally looking up. Diana is going to get me a job at her company. Something in management, probably. I mean, she owes me that much after everything." I froze in the hallway, my heart pounding. She had not even asked me. She had just assumed that I would do it, that I would hand her a high-paying position without question. "Oh, I know it is going to be amazing," Bethany continued, her voice dripping with smugness. "Finally, I will have a job that actually pays well. And it is about time, you know. I have been working so hard and I deserve something good." I felt a surge of anger so intense that I had to grip the doorframe to steady myself. She thought she deserved it. She thought I owed her this. And our parents had clearly reinforced that belief, telling her that I would come through, that I would fix all her problems. I turned and walked out of the house before she could see me. I did not trust myself to have a conversation with her in that moment. I was too angry, too hurt, too overwhelmed by the sheer audacity of her assumption. As I drove back to my apartment, I made a decision. If they wanted me to offer Bethany a job, then I would. But it was not going to be the job she expected. So when she got fired weeks later, and they came begging for me to do the right thing, I offered her a cleaning position at my condo, just to see their real colors. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in mid-December. I was in the middle of a meeting when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Call me immediately. Emergency." I excused myself from the conference room and stepped into the hallway, my pulse quickening. I dialed her number, already bracing myself for whatever drama was about to unfold. "Diana, thank God," my mother said, her voice frantic. "It is Bethany. She got fired." I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. Of course she did. What happened? "It does not matter what happened," my mother said quickly. "What matters is that she needs help. She needs a job, Diana, and you are the only one who can give her one." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, I cannot just create a position for her. That is not how it works." "You can if you want to," she insisted, her tone sharp. "You have the power to make this happen. You owe her this, Diana. After everything, you owe her." There it was again. The expectation that my success was a family asset, something to be distributed according to their needs rather than something I had earned for myself. "I do not owe her anything," I said quietly. "How can you say that?" my mother snapped. "She is your sister. She is family. And right now, she is in trouble. And you are the only one who can help her." I thought about the conversation I had overheard weeks earlier, the smug confidence in Bethany's voice as she told her friend that I was going to hand her a management position. I thought about all the times I had tried to help her, only to watch her squander every opportunity. And I thought about the way my parents had made me feel guilty for working hard and achieving something. "I will help her," I said finally. My mother let out a sigh of relief. "Thank you, Diana. I knew you would come through. But I am not giving her a job at my company," I continued, my voice firm. "I have a different position in mind." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "What do you mean?" "I just bought a condo in Miami," I said. "I need someone to keep it clean, to maintain the property when I am not there. I can offer Bethany a cleaning position. The pay is fair, and it is honest work." The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear my mother's mind racing, trying to process what I had just said. "A cleaning position?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," I said. "It is a legitimate job offer. She would be responsible for keeping the condo clean, handling basic maintenance, things like that. I am willing to pay her well for it." "Diana, you cannot be serious," my mother said, her voice rising. "You want your sister to be your maid?" "I want her to have a job," I said calmly. "Isn't that what you asked for?" "Not like this," my mother shouted. "This is humiliating. She has a college degree, Diana. She is not a housekeeper." "Then maybe she should use that degree to find her own job," I said, my patience finally snapping. "I am offering her a position. If she does not want it, that is her choice. But I am not going to pull strings to get her hired at my company just so she can coast through life on my reputation." "You are unbelievable," my mother hissed. "Absolutely unbelievable." "I am done apologizing for working hard," I said. "If that makes me unbelievable, then so be it." I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking. I knew I had just crossed a line, but I did not care. I was tired of being the bad guy in their story. I was tired of being expected to sacrifice everything I had worked for just to make Bethany's life easier. I went back to my meeting, but I could not focus. My mind was racing, replaying the conversation with my mother, imagining the fallout that was inevitably coming. But beneath the anxiety, there was something else. A sense of relief. For the first time in years, I had drawn a boundary, and I had no intention of letting them cross it. That evening, my phone rang again. This time it was Bethany. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Are you kidding me?" she shouted the moment I picked up. "A cleaning job? Are you serious?" "Hello to you too," I said dryly. "Do not play games with me, Diana," she snapped. Mom told me what you said. You actually think I'm going to clean your stupid condo? I think you need a job, I said calmly. And I am offering you one. If you do not want it, that is fine. But do not act like I am not trying to help. Help, she repeated, her voice dripping with disbelief. You call this helping? You are humiliating me on purpose. You want to make me look pathetic. I want you to take responsibility for your own life, I said, my voice hardening. You are almost 30 years old, Bethany. You have been bouncing from job to job for years, and every time something goes wrong, you expect someone else to fix it. I am done enabling that. Enabling? She shrieked. You think I need to be enabled? I have been working my entire life, Diana. Just because I have not had the same opportunities as you does not mean I have not been trying. You have had plenty of opportunities, I shot back. You just never stick with anything long enough to see it through. And now you expect me to hand you a high-paying job you have not earned just because we are family. I deserve better than cleaning toilets, she said, her voice trembling with rage. Then earn it, I said simply. There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, and I knew she was struggling to come up with a response. You are a terrible sister, she said finally, her voice breaking. I hate you. That is fine, I said quietly. But the offer stands. If you want the job, it is yours. If not, then I hope you find something else. She hung up without another word. I set my phone down on the kitchen counter and stared at it for a long moment, waiting to feel something. Guilt, maybe. Regret. But all I felt was exhaustion. Over the next few days, the messages came flooding in. My father called me a disgrace. My mother sent me long, rambling texts about how I was tearing the family apart. Bethany posted vague messages on social media about being betrayed by the people you trust most. I ignored all of it. I was done defending myself. I was done explaining my choices. If they wanted to see me as the villain, then that was their problem, not mine. But even as I tried to move on, I could not shake the feeling that this was far from over. They were not going to let this go. They were going to keep pushing, keep demanding, keep trying to guilt me into giving Bethany what she wanted. And I knew that eventually, I was going to have to face them again. That moment came sooner than I expected. My sister's jaw dropped and my parents erupted as they realized I had no intention of elevating her above the effort she was willing to put in. It was 2 days before Christmas when they showed up at my apartment in Atlanta. I had just gotten home from work, exhausted from a long day of meetings, when I heard the buzzer. I glanced at the intercom screen and saw my parents standing in the lobby, their faces grim. I considered pretending I was not home, but I knew that would only make things worse. I buzzed them in, my stomach twisting with dread. When I opened the door, my mother pushed past me without a word, her face tight with anger. My father followed, his expression cold and distant. Bethany came in last, her eyes red and puffy from crying. We need to talk, my mother said, her voice sharp. I closed the door and crossed my arms, leaning against the wall. Okay. Talk. You cannot seriously expect Bethany to take that job, my mother said, her tone accusatory. It is degrading, it is humiliating, and it is completely beneath her. It is honest work, I said calmly. There is nothing degrading about it. She has a college degree, my father interjected. She should not be cleaning houses. Then she should use that degree to find a job, I said, my voice hardening. But she does not get to sit around waiting for someone to hand her a career. That is not how the world works. You could help her, my mother said, her voice rising. You have connections, Diana. You could get her a real job, a job that pays well and uses her skills. What skills? I asked, my patience finally snapping. She has been fired from every job she has ever had. She has no experience, no specialized training, and no work ethic. What exactly am I supposed to tell my colleagues? That she is qualified just because she is my sister? You are supposed to help her because she is family. My mother shot back. That is what family does. Family does not mean I have to sacrifice my reputation to cover for her failures, I said, my voice cold. If she wants a job in my industry, she needs to earn it, and that means starting at the bottom, just like I did. Bethany, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke. You think you are so much better than me, don't you? I turned to look at her, my jaw tight. I never said that. You didn't have to, she said, her voice trembling. You have always acted like you are better than everyone else, like you are the only one who works hard, like the rest of us are just lazy and useless. I never said you were lazy, I said quietly. But I am not going to pretend that you have put in the same effort I have. You haven't. Because I haven't had the same opportunities, she shot back. Mom and Dad helped you when you were starting out. They paid for your apartment. They covered your expenses. I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. Are you serious? They never helped me. I lived on ramen noodles for 2 years because I could not afford anything else. I worked unpaid internships and took on jobs no one else wanted just to get a foot in the door. Everything I have, I earned on my own. That is not true, my mother said, her voice defensive. We have always supported you. You supported Bethany, I said, my voice rising. You paid her rent. You bought her car. You covered her bills. I got nothing. Because you didn't need it, my father said, his tone dismissive. You were doing fine on your own. So because I was struggling silently, I didn't deserve help? I asked, my voice shaking with anger. But because Bethany complains constantly, she gets everything handed to her? No one answered. They just stared at me, their faces a mixture of shock and indignation. I am done with this, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I offered Bethany a job. If she does not want it, that is fine. But I am not going to pull strings to get her hired at my company. She needs to figure out her own life. And you need to stop enabling her. You are going to regret this, my mother said, her voice cold. One day, you are going to need us, and we are not going to be there. Good, I said, meeting her gaze. Because I have never needed you before, and I am not going to start now. They left without another word, slamming the door behind them. I stood there in the silence, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. I had just severed ties with my family, and I did not know if there was any way to repair the damage. But as the adrenaline began to fade, I realized something. I did not want to repair it. I was done trying to earn their approval. I was done sacrificing my happiness to make them comfortable. For the first time in my life, I was free. Their panic grew when I calmly explained that my company required qualifications she did not have, and that family entitlement was not a substitute for skill. Over the next few weeks, the messages continued. My mother sent me long emails, alternating between guilt trips and outright accusations. My father left voicemails, his voice heavy with disappointment. Bethany posted passive-aggressive messages on social media, clearly hoping I would see them and feel guilty. But I didn't. I felt lighter than I had in years. At work, I threw myself into a new project, a major land acquisition deal that required all my focus and energy. I spent long hours at the office, coordinating with legal teams, negotiating with investors, and reviewing contracts. It was exhausting, but it was also exhilarating. I was good at my job, and I did not need anyone's validation to know that. One afternoon in early January, I received an email from Bethany. The subject line read, "Please read this." I hesitated before opening it, unsure if I wanted to subject myself to another round of accusations. But curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on the message. "Diana," it began, "I know things have been really hard between us, and I know you probably do not want to hear from me. But I need you to understand something. I am not asking you for a handout. I am not asking you to give me something I have not earned. I am just asking you to give me a chance. I know I have made mistakes, and I know I have not always made the best decisions. But I am trying. I am really trying. And I just need someone to believe in me. Please, Diana, just give me one chance. I read the email 3 times, trying to decide how I felt about it. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think that maybe she had finally realized what she needed to do. But another part of me, the part that had been burned too many times, could not shake the feeling that this was just another manipulation. I did not respond, not because I wanted to be cruel, but because I knew that anything I said would only lead to more arguments, more guilt, more demands. I was done being dragged into their drama. A few days later, I received a call from a number I did not recognize. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Diana, a woman's voice said. This is Patricia, from Hollowgate Systems. I work in human resources. My stomach sank. Hollowgate Systems was one of the companies my firm frequently partnered with on development projects. I had a professional relationship with several people there, and the last thing I needed was for my family drama to spill over into my work life. Yes, this is Diana, I said cautiously. I am calling because we received a resume from someone claiming to be your sister, Patricia said. A Bethany. She listed you as a reference and said you could vouch for her qualifications. I closed my eyes, my jaw clenching. Of course she did. What position is she applying for? I asked, already dreading the answer. Senior Marketing Coordinator, Patricia said. It is a mid-level management role. She said she has extensive experience in marketing and public relations. I let out a slow breath, trying to keep my voice steady. Patricia, I appreciate you calling me, but I cannot vouch for her qualifications. She does not have the experience for a role like that, and I would not feel comfortable recommending her. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I see. Well, thank you for your honesty. I will make a note of that in her file. Thank you, I said quietly. I hung up, my hands trembling. Bethany had not just assumed I would help her. She had actively used my name to try to get a job she was not qualified for, and if I had not been honest with Patricia, she could have gotten hired, only to fail spectacularly and damage my reputation in the process. I was furious, not just at Bethany, but at my parents for enabling this behavior, for making her believe that she could skate through life on other people's efforts. That evening, I received a text from my mother. How could you? I stared at the message, my anger boiling over. I typed out a response, my fingers flying across the screen. How could I what? Tell the truth? Refuse to lie for her? I am not going to put my career on the line just because she thinks she deserves a job she has not earned. She needs to take responsibility for her own life, and you need to stop making excuses for her. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Almost immediately, my phone rang. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. I turned my phone off and set it on the kitchen counter, my chest tight with anger and exhaustion. As they stormed off in outrage, I enjoyed the rare quiet of knowing I had finally drawn a boundary they could not step over again. The days that followed were eerily silent. No calls, no texts, no passive-aggressive social media posts. It was as if my family had collectively decided that I no longer existed. And to my surprise, I did not mind. In fact, I felt a sense of relief I had not experienced in years. I spent the next few weeks focusing on myself. I finalized the details on my Miami condo, working with an interior designer to furnish it exactly the way I wanted. I traveled there for a long weekend, standing on the balcony overlooking the ocean, breathing in the salty air, feeling a sense of accomplishment that no one could take away from me. This was mine. I had earned it. And I was not going to apologize for it. At work, my latest deal closed successfully, and my boss pulled me aside to congratulate me. "You have been absolutely killing it lately," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Keep this up, and we will be talking about a promotion soon." I smiled, feeling a surge of pride. This was what mattered. Not my family's approval, not their expectations. My own success, my own achievements. But the peace did not last. In late January, I received a message from an old college friend, Vanessa, who still lived in Atlanta and occasionally ran into my family at social events. "Hey, just wanted to give you a heads up," she wrote. "I saw your sister at a coffee shop yesterday, and she was telling everyone who would listen about how you abandoned her in her time of need. She is making you sound like a monster. Just thought you should know." I sighed, setting my phone down. Of course she was. Bethany had always been good at playing the victim, at spinning stories to make herself look sympathetic. I was not surprised, but I was disappointed. I had hoped that maybe, just maybe, she would take some time to reflect on her own behavior. But instead, she was doubling down, painting me as the villain in her narrative. A few days later, I received a call from my aunt, my mother's sister. We had never been particularly close, but she had always been kind to me. "Diana, I just wanted to reach out," she said gently. "Your mother told me what happened, and I have to say, I think you did the right thing." I blinked, surprised. "Really?" "Really," she said. "I love your sister, but she has been coddled her entire life. Someone needed to tell her the truth, and I am glad you were brave enough to do it." "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "That means a lot." "Your mother is upset, of course," my aunt continued, "but I think deep down she knows you are right. She just does not want to admit it." We talked for a while longer, and by the time we hung up, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was the first time anyone in my family had acknowledged that I was not the villain in this story, and it gave me hope that maybe, eventually, things could change. But I was not holding my breath. In early February, I received an email from an unexpected source. It was from Patricia at Hollowgate Systems. "Diana, I wanted to thank you again for your honesty regarding your sister's application. After we declined to move forward with her, she sent several hostile emails to our team, accusing us of discrimination and threatening legal action. I just wanted to let you know that we have documented everything, and we will not be considering her for any future positions. I thought you should be aware in case she tries to use your name again." I read the email twice, my stomach sinking. Bethany had not just been rejected. She had burned a bridge, and she had done it using my name as a reference. I forwarded the email to my mother without comment. I did not expect a response, and I did not get one, but I wanted her to see the consequences of enabling Bethany's behavior. I wanted her to understand that this was not my fault. This was the result of years of coddling, years of making excuses, years of refusing to hold Bethany accountable for her own actions. A week later, I received a call from Bethany. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. "Diana," she said, her voice small and shaky. "Can we talk?" "About what?" I asked, my tone guarded. "About everything," she said. "I know I messed up. I know I have been unfair to you, and I just want to apologize." I sat down on my couch, my heart pounding. This was the first time she had ever admitted she was wrong. "Okay, I am listening." "I have been thinking a lot about what you said," she continued, "about how I have been expecting things to be handed to me. And you were right. I have been coasting. I have been blaming everyone else for my problems instead of taking responsibility. And I am sorry." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think that maybe she had finally had a moment of self-awareness. But I had been down this road before. I had heard apologies, seen tears, watched her promise to do better, only to see her fall back into the same patterns. "What are you going to do differently?" I asked quietly. "I am going to get my act together," she said. I am going to find a job on my own. I am going to stop expecting everyone else to fix my life, and I am going to prove to you that I can do this. I hope you do, I said sincerely. But you need to understand something, Bethany. I am not going to keep rescuing you. You need to figure this out on your own. I know, she said, her voice breaking. And I will. We talked for a few more minutes, and when we hung up, I felt a strange mix of hope and skepticism. I wanted to believe that she was serious, that she was finally ready to change, but only time would tell. Over the next few months, I heard updates from my aunt. Bethany had found a job as an administrative assistant at a small firm. It was not glamorous, and it did not pay particularly well. But she was showing up every day. She was learning. She was trying. My parents, meanwhile, had gone quiet. My aunt mentioned that they were struggling to accept that they had been enabling Bethany for years, that their approach had done more harm than good. It was a difficult realization, and I knew it would take time for them to process it. As for me, I was thriving. My promotion came through in April, and with it came a significant raise and more responsibility. I spent more time in Miami, enjoying the condo I had worked so hard to afford. I made new friends, explored the city, and built a life that was entirely my own. One evening in late May, I was sitting on my balcony in Miami, watching the sun set over the ocean, when my phone buzzed with a text from Bethany. "Thank you for not giving up on me," it read. "I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I hope one day I can earn it." I smiled, typing out a response. "You are on the right track. Keep going." It was not a full reconciliation. There was still a lot of hurt, a lot of damage that would take years to repair. But it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. As I sat there, watching the sky turn shades of pink and orange, I thought about everything that had happened. The accusations, the arguments, the hurt. And I realized that drawing that boundary, as painful as it had been, was the best thing I could have done. Not just for me, but for Bethany too. She needed to learn that success was not handed out. It was earned. And I needed to learn that I did not owe anyone my achievements. I took a sip of my wine, feeling the ocean breeze on my face, and allowed myself to enjoy the moment. I had worked hard for this. I had sacrificed for this, and I was not going to let anyone take it away from me. Bethany's trajectory over the following year was a slow, humbling descent. She struggled to keep the administrative assistant job, often calling in sick or showing up late. By autumn, she was let go for repeated absences. My parents tried to cushion her fall once more, offering to let her stay at home indefinitely, but their financial situation had worsened. My father had retired, and their savings were stretched thin. They could no longer afford to subsidize her lifestyle. She took a series of part-time jobs, retail positions mostly, where her college degree meant nothing. She worked at a boutique, a coffee shop, and eventually a grocery store. Each job was a reminder of the opportunities she had squandered, the bridges she had burned. Her social media posts, once filled with selfies and brunch photos, became sporadic and subdued. She stopped talking about her dreams and started talking about surviving. My parents, confronted with the reality that their enabling had crippled rather than helped Bethany, began to distance themselves from her drama. My mother stopped calling me with guilt trips. My father stopped sending disappointed voicemails. They were forced to accept that I had been right all along, that their approach had done more harm than good. It was a bitter pill to swallow, and I knew they resented me for it, even as they quietly acknowledged the truth. Bethany eventually moved into a small apartment with 2 roommates, a far cry from the life of comfort she had enjoyed at our parents' house. She was no longer the golden child. She was just another person trying to make ends meet. And while I felt no satisfaction in her struggles, I also felt no guilt. She had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences. As for me, I continued to build the life I had always wanted. My career flourished. My condo in Miami became a sanctuary, and I surrounded myself with people who valued hard work and integrity. I had learned that family was not about blood. It was about respect, support, and mutual effort. And if my family could not offer me those things, then I was better off without them. Looking back on the journey, I realized that the hardest part had not been cutting ties. It had been accepting that I deserved more than what they were willing to give me. I had spent so many years trying to earn their approval, trying to prove that I was worthy of their love. But the truth was, I had always been worthy. I just needed to believe it myself. Revenge, I learned, was not about making others suffer. It was about reclaiming your own power, setting boundaries, and refusing to let anyone diminish your worth. And in that sense, I had won.